Here's a number that should be keeping studio executives up at night, somewhere north of $1 billion. That's roughly what Hollywood has poured into a handful of 2026 blockbusters that were supposed to carry the year and were only in July. Now, the part that gets me isn't that people predicted some of these would flop. People predict flops every single year. Half the time they're wrong. The part that gets me is that 3 of these movies already flopped. Not might, not on track to, done. The opening weekends happened, the numbers came in, and they were bad enough that the trade papers were using the word bomb before the second Monday. So today we're doing this a little differently. We're going through 7 of the biggest, most expensive films on the 2026 calendar. First, the ones that already crashed, then the ones lining up to crash next. A couple of these you could see coming from a mile off. One is going to genuinely surprise you, and one of them isn't even the movie you think it is. Let's start with the one that's already stone cold. If you want to understand what's wrong with the modern blockbuster in a single case study, here it is. Masters of the Universe hit theaters on June 5th from Amazon MGM, directed by Travis Knight, with Nicholas Galitzine as He-Man and Jared Leto chewing scenery as Skeletor. The reported budget was around $170 million, and some outlets put it closer to $200. That's the kind of money you spend when you're confident a whole new audience is going to fall in love with your characters. They did not. The opening weekend brought in about $29 million domestically. To put that in perspective, that's behind the opening weekends of famous money pits like John Carter and Prince of Persia. Then, the second weekend dropped roughly 70%, which in box office terms is the sound of a movie hitting the pavement. The worldwide total limped to somewhere around $112 million against a break-even point that analysts pegged as high as $340 to $500 million. You don't need a calculator for that one. And here's the detail that tells the whole story. On opening night, only about 4 or 5% of the audience was under the age of 12. The single biggest group buying tickets was people aged 45 to 54. In other words, the only folks showing up were the ones who watched the He-Man cartoon in 1983. There was no new generation. Variety, reporting on the results, said it was shaping up to be one of the biggest bombs of the year, and that the film would have a hard time justifying its price tag. The strange twist? Audiences who did see it mostly liked it. The Rotten Tomatoes audience score sat around 87%. It just didn't matter, because loving a movie doesn't help if almost nobody buys a ticket. Oh, and Jared Leto. At this point, the man is developing a reputation. Morbius, Haunted Mansion, Tron, Ares, and now this. When your leading villain has become box office shorthand for handle with care, that's a problem the marketing department can't fix. The genuinely absurd cherry on top, reports say a sequel is still being discussed, which tells you everything about how these decisions actually get made. Now let's talk about the one that stung the most, because this was supposed to be the safe bet. Supergirl, or Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow if you want the full title, came out June 26th from Warner Brothers and DC Studios. Millie Alcock in the lead, Jason Momoa showing up as Lobo, directed by Craig Gillespie, based on the well-regarded Tom King and Bilquis Evely comic. This was James Gunn's DC. This was supposed to be the follow-up that proved last year's Superman wasn't a fluke. It opened to about $37 million domestically and roughly $62 to $68 million worldwide. It got beaten by the second weekend of Toy Story 5. Deadline reported that industry sources were estimating a loss of around $125 million once you factor in everything, because the film reportedly cost about $170 million to make and another $120 or so to market. Break-even was said to sit around $315 million globally, and it was nowhere close to that pace. For context, Gunn himself had shot down an earlier report claiming the budget was $200 million, calling it, and I'm paraphrasing here, not even slightly true. Whatever the exact figure, the outcome was the same. This is now Warner's second big miss of 2026 after a film called The Bride flatlined at $23 million worldwide earlier in the spring. The analyst Jeff Bach at Exhibitor Relations summed up the core issue pretty bluntly. Supergirl, as a character, has never been an event. She's a household name in the sense that everyone's heard of her, but everyone's heard of her and everyone will pay $15 to watch her are two completely different things. And a chunk of the online conversation before release, according to the analytics firm Relish Mix, was people saying it looked like Guardians of the Galaxy stretched into a one-woman show. When your own trailers are getting compared unfavorably to a different franchise, the writing's on the wall. This one's interesting because on paper it isn't a flop, and that's exactly why it belongs on this list. The Mandalorian and Grogu opened May 22nd Memorial Day weekend, directed by Jon Favreau, with Pedro Pascal back as Din Djarin. It made about $82 million over the 3-day and $98 million over the 4-day holiday. In post-pandemic terms, a $100 million-ish holiday opening is respectable. Nothing to be ashamed of. Here's the catch. That was the worst opening for a Star Wars movie since Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012. Worse than Solo, the film that everyone points to as the franchise's cautionary tale. The movie has now grossed around $340 million worldwide, which makes it the 10th highest grossing film of the year and also the lowest grossing live-action Star Wars film ever made. Both of those things are true at the same time, and the math still isn't kind. The Hollywood Reporter noted the movie carried a $165 million budget, softened a bit by a $21 million California tax credit, but once you stack marketing on top, estimates put the break-even point somewhere in the $500 to $600 million range. It's not going to get there. The critics were mixed, sitting around 62%, though the audience score was a warmer 87 and it earned an A- on CinemaScore. So why does a movie that made $340 million belong in a video about disasters? Because Star Wars used to be a guaranteed billion. This is the biggest brand in the galaxy, and its big screen return couldn't out-open a movie that started life as a streaming show. That's not a hit. That's a franchise quietly telling you it isn't what it used to be, and that matters a lot for what's coming in December, which we'll get to. Alright, from here on, none of these have opened yet. We're switching from autopsies to x-rays, and the biggest, most nerve-wracking scan on the board is Avengers, Doomsday, landing December 18th. The Russo brothers are back. Robert Downey Jr. is back too, except now he's playing Dr. Doom instead of Iron Man, which is either the smartest or the strangest casting decision Marvel has made in a decade. Depends who you ask. The problem is the price. Reporting on the budget has ranged from around $500 million to as high as $600 million, with some of the wilder estimates pushing the all-in figure toward $1 billion once marketing's included. That would potentially make it one of the most expensive movies ever produced. Downey's salary alone is reportedly north of $100 million. To break even, this thing likely needs to clear $1 billion worldwide and probably a fair bit more. Now, in fairness, here's the case for Doomsday not being a disaster because it's a real case. Event Marvel still works. Spider-Man: No Way Home did $1.9 billion. Deadpool and Wolverine did $1.33 billion. And here's a stat that should give the doubters pause. The trailer for this summer's Spider-Man, Brand New Day, reportedly became the first movie trailer ever to cross 1 billion views on YouTube. The appetite for the big team-up spectacle clearly hasn't vanished, so Doomsday will almost certainly make a lot of money. The question isn't whether it's a hit. The question is whether a lot of money is enough when the bill is this staggering. There's a version of December where this film grosses $1 billion and is still technically a disappointment, and that's a genuinely bizarre place for the MCU to have ended up. And now the reason December 18th is a battlefield. Because Avengers, Doomsday is not opening alone that day. It's opening directly against Dune, Part 3. The internet already has a name for it, Doomsday. Denis Villeneuve is finishing his adaptation. Timothée Chalamet is back as Paul, and creatively, this is one of the most anticipated films of the year. The trajectory has been going the right way too. Part 1 made about $410 million, while also streaming on HBO Max at the same time. Part 2, with no streaming crutch, jumped to roughly $714 million and became a genuine cultural moment. So Dune is trending up, not down. Here's why it's on this list anyway, and it's got almost nothing to do with quality. Warner Brothers and Legendary planted their flag on that December 18th date first, locked up the exclusive IMAX screens for 3 weeks, and then flatly refused to move when Marvel parked Doomsday on the exact same day. Their public line, essentially, was, "We chose the date first." That's a bold stance, and it might even be the right one. Dune has a much friendlier budget, reportedly around $200 million, which means its break-even point sits closer to $400 million rather than $1 billion. It could lose the opening weekend arm wrestle to Avengers and still walk away profitable. But you cannot open a slow, cerebral, 3-hour space opera on the same day as the biggest superhero team-up in years and pretend there's no cost. Somebody's screens get taken. Somebody's audience splits. If you had to bet on which of these two films is actually the safer investment, the honest answer might be the sci-fi art film, not the superhero juggernaut. That would have sounded insane 5 years ago. Next up, and this is where I want to push back on the popular take a little. The Hunger Games. Sunrise on the Reaping arrives November 20th from Lionsgate, directed by Francis Lawrence, who steered most of this franchise. It's a prequel about a young Hamish Abernathy, played by newcomer Joseph Zada, with Ralph Fiennes stepping into the President Snow role. Reported budget is somewhere over $150 million, so this isn't a small swing either. The common argument against it goes like this. The Hunger Games peaked with Jennifer Lawrence, the culture has moved on, and nobody's clamoring for another trip to Panem. And look, there's something to the franchise fatigue worry. The last prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, did fine rather than spectacular. But there's a detail a lot of the Doom videos are getting wrong, so let me correct the record. According to The Hollywood Reporter and others, Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson are reportedly returning for an epilogue sequence. So the claim that this movie has none of the original stars simply isn't accurate. On top of that, the marketing has been aggressive and genuinely clever, with those Mockingjay and Snake installations popping up in Chicago and Times Square, and the trailer landed with real buzz. I'm not telling you it's a lock. I'm telling you that a November slot, a proven director, a beloved book, and a surprise Katniss cameo is a much steadier footing than He-Man had. Of everything in the back half of this list, this is the one I'd be most nervous about betting against. File it under moderate risk, not dead on arrival. And now, the one that isn't the movie you think it is. If you've watched any other video like this one, somebody has almost certainly put a 2026 Last Airbender movie on their bomb list, usually with a clip of the notorious 2010 live-action disaster and a lot of talk about how fans will never trust another live-action attempt. Here's the thing. There is no live-action theatrical Airbender in 2026. The film everyone's actually thinking of is Avatar: Aang, The Last Airbender. It's animated. It's the very first feature from Avatar Studios, made with the original show's creators involved, and it follows Aang and the gang years after the series ended. It was supposed to be a big theatrical event. Then, over the last several months, it got shuffled around the calendar, and Paramount ultimately pulled it out of theaters entirely and sent it straight to Paramount Plus, where it moved up to a July 25th release. Which means it cannot bomb at the box office because it doesn't have a box office. There's no opening weekend to blow. A movie can't be dead on arrival at a theater it never arrives at. Now, whether a big swing animated film going direct to streaming counts as its own kind of failure, that's a fair debate. And a lot of fans are frustrated they won't get to see it on a big screen. There was even a messy leak of the finished film online back in the spring. But if a bomb prediction video puts this on a list of theatrical disasters, they either didn't check the release schedule or they're hoping you won't. Now you know better than they do. So there's your board. 3 films already in the ground. Masters of the Universe, which walked in with a target on its back. Supergirl, the safe bet that cost DC around $125 million. And The Mandalorian and Grogu, the biggest brand in movies quietly admitting it's shrinking. Then, 3 still to come in the back half of the year. Avengers, Doomsday, which might make $1 billion and still disappoint. Dune Part 3, a great film picking the worst possible day to open. And the Hunger Games prequel, which I think a lot of people are burying way too early. Here's what I actually want to know from you. When Doomsday and Dune go head-to-head on December 18th, who wins the weekend? And does Doomsday's insane budget end up sinking it even if it takes the top spot? Drop your December 18th prediction in the comments, because I'm genuinely going to read them, and I'll be making a follow-up when those numbers come in. If you like this kind of grounded box office breakdown, instead of the usual clickbait, subscribe so you don't miss the December postmortem. It's going to be a bloodbath, and I want to cover it with you. I'll see you in the next one.